Hey Harmonizers, welcome to day 4 with Cadbury and Joe. So he starts off with some groundwork, and today's progression is going to be doing some of these outside turns and then teaching him how to long line, which long lining is actually one of my favorite ways to get horses started under saddle as well, because it teaches them the cues of left, right, stop, all of those pieces before you even get on their back is very, very helpful for them to not feel claustrophobic between those two reins. So in the beginning, kind of started a little bit like this, where Joe needed to get some understanding from Cadbury about turning into the wall, which makes more sense once you'll see how the long lining with a single rein first. So it's kind of cool because Cadbury progressed to figuring out the cue, making those changes of directions, and it's Joe stepping towards him and turning his body that Cadbury was actually able to do all of these little rollbacks. He had a couple moments where he was like, wait, am I supposed to go? And Joe clarifies, no, like turn. And he does a few really nice soft turns, and then he would end up walking away and kind of letting him have a breather and kind of think and digest. But see how he's really turning those shoulders, understanding Joe what he's supposed to do. Gets those nice little rollbacks in there. I'm thinking, man, I'm going to have a little cutting horse that Cadbury's going to be able to do a whole bunch of little rollbacks and everything. So he does these little soft turns, these little shoulder movements, and then you can see he'll back off and Cadbury will come on over and be like, oh, I did it. Okay, good. And of course, it progressed really slowly. Like, he didn't go to that many turns right away. There were some other pieces along the way to help make sure Cadbury was ready for that ask. And if you want to watch the full documentary series that Joe's putting together of his training with Cadbury, then check the link description, because once it's ready, I'll include a link there that you guys can go check out the full training series. Whereas I'm more highlighting some different clips along the way, showing you a bunch of the progress that Cadbury made. So this is him putting the saddle on. Now, when I showed you day 3's video, Cadbury had quite the explosion after the saddle was put on, even though Joe had done a lot of the girth work prior to, literally having the rope with the girth attached to it and getting him used to that pressure. Cadbury still panicked when the saddle went on. So here I'm speeding up the footage just to kind of show you how slow and patient Joe goes, how Cadbury gets cookies along the way for standing still and being accepting of that saddle. Because sometimes when, there's a compilation of video clips, sometimes people can think, oh my gosh, you went way too fast and that's why the horse exploded. And so I'm showing you, look, he takes his time, he offers positive reinforcement. Cadbury is, he kind of pulls on the girth, he does all of these little pieces before we get to that spot. Now, what's super exciting is Cadbury is so much better today. I'm over the moon. For me, I was like, okay, that's not the end of the world. He kind of skipped his front end for a second there because, he feels the pressure under his belly. So that's kind of an up cue when you're thinking of the pressure and release and how we teach them to move away from pressure. But it was not a full-blown panic. It was just a little move, a little funny. So Joe goes in and he's kind of doing a little bit more with the girth or the cinch. It's called a girth if it's an English saddle, cinch if it's a Western saddle, so technically a cinch, but basically the belt that goes around a horse's belly. And he kind of pulls on it, he tightens it slowly, offers that cookie, which the cookie is great for making sure the horse is licking and chewing, but also establishing that positive association, trying to get a little bit of that dopamine release to help the horse think yeah, this isn't so bad, I get cookies, opportunity to earn, nothing crazy or awful happening here. And so he's getting lots of little cookies. He's standing really nicely. And overall, my heart's in my throat, because I'm oh my gosh, please, Cadbury, please be okay with this, because I don't want my horse to feel overwhelmed. I want him to be enjoying the training process and figuring out that this can be fun together and excited to take on that riding journey together. And he starts to move off and go, and I'm okay, this is great. And when I see Cadbury moving too, I'm okay, he's got a lot of lightness in his steps. I think he's going to be quite a fancy horse once we get all these basics really the foundation laid on him, where he understands all the pieces. I think he's going to be capable of being quite fancy and know how to do a lot of things. He's got a lot of natural abilities to be light on his feet. But overall, I'm oh yes, I wanted to jump off my chair and be oh my God, yay, Cadbury. But of course, did not jump off my chair because I did not want to overwhelm Cadbury with my excitement. But I was just so happy that compared to day 3, putting on the saddle and how it was overwhelming for him, and he had some bucks and broncs in there because he was like, thing on my belly. And then look at this, Joe like really pulls on that girth purposefully so that way he can kind of control how much he does, and then offers that cookie afterwards because he wants to make sure that Cadbury is accepting of that and realizes that it is okay. Because before Joe goes to get on Cadbury, it's going to be important that Cadbury's not triggered by the saddle, because if he's already feeling overwhelmed about one thing, then it adds a whole other layer with the person getting on their back as well. So he pulls on the girth, he moves him, he does some of this groundwork, moving him around, asking him to trot, move out, do some turns, do a whole bunch of things. And Cadbury overall just looks so much more at ease with that saddle. Like he's standing so much more relaxed. The way he's moving is so much more relaxed. So overall, even just his vibe is so much different from day 3 when the saddle went on. So it's great to see that he's finally kind of like, okay, yeah, saddle's fine. Now there was one adjustment made to the saddle for this session as well, which is that there's no back cinch. And we don't know if it was the back cinch that made him feel triggered on day 3, but it was important to build up his confidence and make sure it finished okay. And we did end on a good note. So who knows? Is it because we made sure we finished on a good note at the end of day 3? We really took the time to help him. He got to chill and eat hay and have water while wearing the saddle. Is it because I did a session before this one? So I did a session earlier in the day where I did the bareback pad with the girth, and then I used the other saddle with just a front cinch and just kind of took it slow, gave him cookies along the way. So he had a session before this session. And then he had a long break before he came out to do this session with Joe. But now he's got the big heavy saddle on again. This is a big ranch saddle, so it weighs significantly more than the saddle that I did my little session with. So who knows? Could be all of the things just kind of combining together to get him to this point where he actually looks relaxed, he looks more thinking, like he looks so much more at ease. But we're really trying to set him up for success to be happy to be ridden, to try to take away all of those stress and the triggers, which is what Joe's doing here, which is he's doing the rope behind him, behind his back. And the idea is it's teaching him to turn both left and right. So if we remember from his day 3 as well, Joe was able to get on him with no saddle and did do a little walking circle to the left, but when he asked for the walking circle to the right, Cadbury did a panic rear and Joe came off, and so then they didn't end up doing the turn to the right. So this is about trying to help him follow that feel, not panic, and be able to turn. And I kept this little clip in here to show you that it doesn't always go perfect. Sometimes they get their feet caught up in the rope, but it's important to just be calm, get the rope back, reset up. And there's so much other stuff that's happening. So even if the exercise doesn't go perfect like that, where the rope gets, around their feet, the horse learns just stop, wait, a human will help you. It kind of helps them not get so panicked in different situations. They learn that we can step in and help, which is another piece of why it's so important not to punish horses when they get the wrong answer or the answer that we're not looking for, because then they feel okay. Like if something's really going on and upsetting them, they can stop and look to the human for help and support. Like here, Cadbury did his turn and then he turned a little too much and it stayed caught on the horn. But Cadbury just looks to Joe and he's like, did I do it right? Is that what you wanted? And Joe just walks over and is like, yeah, thanks, buddy. Like that was really good. And so he can continue with sorting out the rope there, and Cadbury just stands really patiently. So after doing the rope around the butt, he's progressed it to, he does behind the saddle and does behind the horn. And so the idea is that Cadbury learns that if you feel a rein pull, like here he's going to clarify, he's trying to push his head away to help Cadbury put the two pieces together. Cadbury does a little rear hop because he's not really understanding where the pressure is. And I love that Joe's not getting upset at him, not adding the punishment. He's just like, yeah, like good try, buddy. You're not going to get a cookie because I don't want you to do the little rear hop, but there is no scolding of Cadbury. And I love it because it doesn't add the emotion to the situation, but also I think Cadbury's going to make a super cool little trick pony doing all sorts of fancy things. I love that he is so light on his front end because I think I'm going to be able to teach him to rear on purpose pretty easily, and it's going to be a thing that's not super hard for him to do. And I love doing little trick things with my horses. It's a fun thing for me, and it seems like it comes easy for him. So I'll be able to help him learn that later. Whereas if, let's say, Cadbury was being trained by somebody that scolded him for that, then I wouldn't be able to have those options later, which for most people are not going to matter because most people don't want their horse to rear while you're on their back, which is totally fair and reasonable. However, I just love that Cadbury is able to stay super calm. See, he's getting more cookies for finding the right answer and progresses this so that way he's able to put the rope around the horn and doesn't need a support cue. So there's no flag or pressure from the hand to kind of direct his head either way. He's able to do one direction and he's able to do the other direction, just kind of pulling on that little horn area. He's able to turn really softly and understand what that means, which sets him up even more for success for when it comes to time to get on his back and do the riding. He should know what that left right is. Also, even before we get to the long lining piece, which you're going to see in a second here, where he starts to learn what those cues mean. So all in all, Cadbury's doing so much better. Like, he's really progressing. And this is now going out with the single long line. So there's just one line attached and there's the turn towards the wall. And you can kind of see why a turn in towards him would not work, because the rope would end up wrapped around Cadbury. So he does a turn towards the wall. Now the rope is on the wall. And then he can make a turn towards the wall and it's okay. And then he's able to drive him out and make the turn towards the wall again. Otherwise, the rope would end up in front of him and turned around. So pretty cool to be able to see this. So there's another turn towards the wall. And now you can see the rope is along the wall. So it works using that one rein. And now that he's taught that turn towards the wall, he can do that. Now you can see when it goes behind his butt, Cadbury's like, hey, what's it doing behind my butt? And he got a little kind of like, what's going on here? And then here is using two reins. So trying to do the same thing where he was going to do the same like turns towards the wall. And Cadbury ended up spun around and kind of confused as to what he was supposed to do there. But I like that Cadbury stops and is like, Joe, I need help. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. And Joe just comes over and is like, yeah, I'm going to help you, buddy. So here's again another attempt using the two reins and trying to turn him with the right rein to turn him, and then trying to use the left rein to hold him out on the wall. And Cadbury's just like, I don't get it. I don't understand. And so Joe just kind of lets go, waits for Cadbury, and you can see Cadbury stops and kind of comes over, is like, Joe, I don't get it. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Now, one of the things that Joe was saying is because he had hurt his hand earlier, he's like, my hand really hurts. So when he pulled on him and he needed to use that one rein, he wasn't able to do that. So we had Jen come in to finish this part of the two reins for Cadbury to understand. And that's an important thing, to have a support system. It's the same reason, like, I've got my friends here in Virginia that are able to help me. We're down at Harmonia Equestrian with Jen and Joe. And so they're able to help me because I'm still in that risk of a second concussion from my accident that I had in 2023. And so this is not quite at the 2-year mark, and I've got to be careful with my head. So I came down to get help from my friends. And so then something happened to Joe where he hurt his hand and he's like, I need help. And so it's great when you have people you can trust that can come out and help. So Jen here is trying to help Cadbury figure out like turn, and I'm showing you some of that parts because it's like learning can be messy. She's trying to help him understand turn right. And if you remember from his day 3 video, it was the left turn that was easy. He was able to ride the left circle, but turning right was the hard one. And so you want to follow through with that pressure and make sure they understand to give to that pressure to turn. And so she stays calm, she holds that pressure, and you can see her kind of, when she pulled on that rope a little bit, but all in all, he doesn't have a bit in his mouth. He's got a halter on. And he's got to understand to give and follow with that feel. And it comes more than just training a horse how to ride. Even if, let's say, Cadbury were to get stuck in a fence or to step on his rope, you don't want him to panic and go, but there's no cookie, there's no target. Like, what am I supposed to do? You want him to know that if you feel that pressure, soften to that pressure, give to that pressure. And what's interesting about horses, and even with other animals as well, positive reinforcement works when you're in a thinking frame of mind. But if adrenaline goes up and you're scared, positive reinforcement does not work. Not in that moment. That's when only pressure and release works. Negative reinforcement works. And what's interesting about that is we kind of all know that, because if you want a horse to get on a trailer, if they're scared of the trailer, it doesn't matter if you show them a wheelbarrow full of carrots going into the trailer, the horse is not getting on the trailer. And instead, working with pressure and release is helpful. And you might say, well, just spend more time training your horse to get on the trailer. And although that can be fair, like that can help, I have experience now with some friends in California where the horses were not caught in the wildfires, but the wildfires were nearby. And there was a lot of smoke coming in, and they could not get some horses on the trailer, even though these horses had been trained to go on the trailer, had been to several shows, had lots of positive experiences on the trailer. Did not matter, because the whole energy of the situation was a bit more scared, panicked, and the horses would not get on the trailer. The horses ended up being left behind and had to be euthanized because of the smoke damage to their lungs. So having a horse that knows how to give to pressure can literally save their life, because then they're not going to panic in those situations, and they understand, oh, okay, turn here, give there. And that's what will help them, because they are super big animals and we're just little tiny humans. We can't just pick them up and place them into the trailer. That does not work. You have very limited options in situations like that. So the more I travel, the more friends I meet, the more stories I hear, the scenarios I become aware of, the more I just learn about what are all the pieces we need to help horses to be safe and to be able to be cared for, all of those things combined. So overall, I'm loving what Jen's done here. Cadbury looks a lot soft, relaxed. He's like, I get it. Let me know what you guys think. Remember to subscribe and check out harmonyhorsemanship.com for even more learning.